Okay, so as has so often been the case over the past 29 years, I now find myself in the unenviable position of having to follow my two amazing brothers. And I always knew that speaking to you all today would be both a great honour and also a bit of a challenge to get up to their standard. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to say to you all today. And I started really by thinking about what Stu has meant to me as a brother over the last 29 years. And I think it's fair to say that both Paul and Stu have always been absolute heroes of mine throughout that time for so many reasons. And as Stu alluded to, we don't maybe spend as much time together as we should, but while everyone's here and while I have a microphone, I just wanted to say that I can honestly say that I would not be the person that I am today without the time, the support and the love that I had from my two big brothers when I was growing up. And so, as I say, when I was sitting down to write the speech, I thought a lot about particularly what Stu meant to me over the years. And to be honest with you, when I was growing up, I just thought Stu was the coolest person in the world. And this was probably the first thing that me and Stu agreed on, because this very much coincided with a period of his life where I think he absolutely believed that he was the coolest person in the world. And I think the best way that I can describe it is to say that I looked at him the way that he looked at himself in a mirror. Or to be honest, any reflective surface. And so you might be listening to this speech and looking at Stu and wondering why I thought he was so cool. Which is a valid, if slightly harsh question if you think about on his special day. But I will try and answer it for you. And I think it's as simple as this, really. So when I was growing up, Stu was 10 years older than me, and I always looked up to him. He always had the fashionable haircuts, the designer clothes, and much to my annoyance, he was always much better than I was at playing football. And so when you take those three things, the haircuts, the fashion, the football, I guess in a way I kind of looked up to him in the way that somebody would look up to David Beckham. and weirdly, Stu seemed to share a trait that Beckham had of still seeming cool despite making at times some very questionable and odd fashion and lifestyle choices. So to me, he still seemed cool, even when he tried to make shiny wet look leather Armani trousers a thing for a while. He still seemed cool to me, even when he came home one day with an incredibly ill-advised shaved head that made him look a little bit like an extra from Trainspotting. And he even still seemed cool to me, even when he would regularly come home and describe himself with the entirely self-assigned nickname of Snake Hips Stu. And normally this would be Saturday or Sunday morning, he'd been out around Wigan the night before, and he'd come in and try and tell his little brother about how entrancing and irresistible his dance moves were to girls. And I can only assume that Stu thought that these moves are such a powerful aphrodisiac that he couldn't possibly get them out in church today. That could be the only... His shapes are too sharp to be in church. And now, when Stu would come home and say this, it'd never just be that he'd say Snake Hip Stu as his nickname. It also had an accompanying gesture, which was sort of a thrust from the hips, which I think medically would be described as a spasm. And Stu, I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to now be married to someone who is literally professionally qualified to assess your dancing abilities. And I'm fairly sure that the Snake Hip Stu spasm isn't on any dance curriculum, but for any age group. But as I say, growing up with Stu, he always seemed so cool to me despite this. And he could always find a way out of a situation and be cool through my eyes. And I think he's tried to pull that trick on you all today a little bit, because in his speech he's talked very honestly and very candidly about how he has stalked Kate at 2 points in their lives. And he uses that word, stalk. And that's not a very cool word. But then at the end of his speech, he has this frankly brilliant anagram thing and gets to walk away looking incredibly clever, rather cute, and still a little bit cool. And I'm not letting him get away with that. I didn't think this would be much of a best man speech without Stu at least feeling a little bit embarrassed at some stage. Which brings me to this.
No.
Because I think this is possibly one of the least cool things that anyone has ever done in the history of the world. And it might not look like much, but this is actually a piece of history. And it's a piece of Stu's history. And it's a piece of Stu's history that I happen to know he is not particularly proud of. And so you're probably wondering what it is. And it's actually an email from the 7th of April 2005. And the sender of this email is of course Stuart Twist. And the recipient is Kate. And this email has the subject line of, "Hey sexy." Which immediately is Stu trying to position himself as cool. So let's see what kind of cool opening lines Stu had for Kate. "Hey Kate, I can't imagine there are too many Kate Hitchmos knocking about. So I thought I would email you at this address on the chance that it's you." So what he's done there is he's been sat at home, in his bedroom, in our parents' house, sat behind the old PC, and he's just guessed Kate's email address. Which I think very much means that the word stalk wasn't just in his speech for the anagram, it is literally true. And I just love the idea that he'd have been sat at home trying every possible permutation of email address that Kate had given that. KH@hotmail.com, KH@yahoo.com, KH@blueyonder.com. Just creating the saddest and creepiest mail merge in all of history. So that's line 1. Line 2 is, "Sent you a text that never got delivered. And tried..." Wait for it. "Sent you a text that never got delivered and tried ringing you a few times, but went straight to voicemail." So we're 2 lines in. The first line was a bit creepy, the second line a bit desperate. Let's see what line 3 has to do. Now the line's just dead. Kate, how much did you not want to talk to? Because I think you invented ghosting about 14 years before anybody used it as a term. He goes on. "Surely you can't have lost another phone, or are you just trying to avoid me?" Wait. "Or are you just trying to avoid me?" Smiley face. I think, Stu, it was almost certainly the latter. I won't make this email too long, in case it's not you, but here's my number if you want it. 1, I don't think she wanted your number. 2, not the length of the email that's the problem. It's the fact that every line is dripping with desperation. And there's more of that. "I will probably go in Berkeley Square tomorrow, actually, to see if you're in. So I might have spoke to you before you get this." So at this point, he's tried, let's have a little tally, he's tried text, he's tried phone, he's tried email, and now he's promised an uninvited and weird face-to-face meeting. Seemingly with no response. What was next, Stu? Carrier pigeon? Morse code? You know, fly a plane over a house with a banner on that said, "Kate, please pity me, I am so desperate." Thankfully, we are getting near the end now. He ends with, "If this is not the Kate that I'm trying to get hold of, then just ignore this email." Which I thought was a reasonable respect, and not very... What's up, Stu?
I remember what.
See, that would have been a reasonably funny ending, but that's not the actual ending. Because the way that paragraph actually goes is, "If this is not the Kate that I'm trying to get hold of, then just ignore this email, ... Unless, of course, you are hot, in which case, you've got my number." again, trying to be cool, but in this case, not getting away with it. And obviously, I'm sure most of you know that Stu's a school teacher, so I actually thought I would give him a taste of his own medicine today, and I thought I'd grade this email. I'm sorry, Stu, but it's going to have to be a D-, with the D very much standing for desperate. I was thinking about this, and I guess normally when you'd give something like a grade or you'd probably put a comment along with it. And I guess when you'd put something like a D-, you'd probably write something like, must try harder. But I can't think of any worse advice in this situation. I don't think anyone has ever tried this hard. And that, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering at this point. There's probably one question going through your mind, so I will ask it on your behalf. Kate, did you reply to this email? No. That is one of the many reasons why I think this is possibly one of the cringiest emails ever sent. Which is actually quite impressive when you think about the fact that there are 270 billion emails sent every single day. And so obviously, at the start of this speech, I talked about how I grew up thinking that Stu was the coolest person in the world. And when I read this email, obviously it forced me to have a little bit of a rethink. And so the other night, I sat down to try and reappraise and recalibrate my opinion of Stu, and this is where I got to. Stu is a bright, kind-hearted and sensitive soul who I know loves his family so much. He is funny and clever and witty. He is a dedicated, successful and inspirational teacher who I know cares so much about the work he does and the difference that he makes to his pupils. He is, of course, an amazing dad to Evie, and I know he cherishes every single moment that he spends with his beautiful and brilliant daughter. He's also a pretty good son, I'd say maybe second or third best in the family. But I know just how much he loves our parents and just how much he appreciates every single thing that they have ever done for us. And I also absolutely know that Stu will be a devoted, loving and brilliant husband to Kate, and that he will do everything he possibly can to make sure they have the happiest and best life together. And now, it's been 14 years since Stu sent this email to Kate, and at that point in their stories it was a time when their paths went in different directions due to life, due to circumstance, and I assume due to the absolutely watertight conditions of the restraining order. And yet, here we are, some over 5,000 days later, for a far more special and far more important moment in their story. And if there's one thing that I've learned about Stu, and particularly Kate, over the last few years, it is that we should never have expected them to be anything other than absolutely ridiculously late. And maybe it just had to be this way, that it would take them longer than we'd have liked to arrive at where they needed to be. And I'm just so glad that they have. Now I'm aware this has already been a long speech, but just indulge me for one last thing, because I just wanted to reflect on the time between this and now. And I know that Stu is a bit of a numbers geek, so I worked out that at the start of the service today it was roughly 7,517,577 minutes since he actually pressed send on that email. Roughly. And I'm sure in all of our lives throughout that time that there's been a lot of ups and downs and highs and lows and huge, enormous heartfelt highs, challenging and terrifying sadness. And I can say that has absolutely been the case in our family. And really, with that in mind, I just wanted to say how grateful I am that despite all of the billions of permutations and paths that our lives could have taken over that time, that somehow we all ended up in this room today to celebrate Kate and Stu saying I do, and to share this moment. And I can think of nowhere on earth that I would rather be than right here in this room with such special people for such a special moment. And so really with those last few thoughts in mind, it gives me a huge amount of pride and pleasure to be able to hand you back to Paul to complete our best man speeches.
Mr. and Mrs. Twist, Stu and Kate.
So that's pretty much it for the speeches, ladies and gents. There is just one last thing, actually. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time talking about this particular email, which we've all enjoyed today, and I'm sure some of you are maybe wanting to see it with your own eyes and look at yourselves. So feel free to come up to me afterwards, and I'll show it to you. You can read it and check that I didn't make any of it up or embellish any areas. Or actually, given that I know how much this embarrasses Stu and how much he clearly loves a big reveal, I have actually got a slightly larger version of it. So I'll find somewhere to put this for you all to enjoy. Thank you very much.